So there's a tension here that we have to experience that is all too real and all too familiar for us, that God's rescue is real. He does rescue his people, but sometimes we don't get to see the promised land. And some of us, we know that all too well. We need rescue from our situation. We've been praying for God to move and to do something, and the hard reality is we haven't experienced that rescue yet, and we may never, ever experience it in this life. We may not get the rescue we need from cancer. We may not get freed from the crushing weight of debt. That relationship that was broken might not get mended in the way we hope. Kids may not come back. Prayers for God's intervention may not be answered like the way we want. We may not get the rescue we want, we need, and we're so desperate for in this life. And that's hard. It's hard for me. It's hard for me to even speak those words out. And it's in that moment that we have to remember that God's rescue is real, and that the ultimate rescue in the story of God is from sin and death, and that this rescue is the one we need more than any other, and that this rescue has already been accomplished in Jesus, that he, in his life, death, and resurrection, has rescued us and made it possible for everyone to be rescued from our enemies of sin and Satan and death, and that is the rescue we need more than any other. And so there's tension here. And in this story in Exodus, God's promise to Moses is that he will rescue his people, and then he does it. And his promise to you and to me is that not that he's going to rescue us from our situation, but that he's already accomplished a rescue that we need most, and that one day he will complete it fully when Jesus comes back. That's his promise. The promise that we can hold on to and find hope in the midst of our circumstances. So there's a tension here. God sees and knows what you're going through, and his rescue is real. It's both. For God's people, and for Moses in Egypt, rescue is coming. God is going to do it. He's going to go with Moses to free his people. And that's where this part of the story ends. It ends in verse 10 with God saying to Moses, "Come, I will send you to Pharaoh that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt." So Moses is going to have a key part in this plan, that God is going to go with Moses, and Moses is going to be the one to lead God's people out of slavery in Egypt. He's God's instrument in God's hands on the ground to see this happen. And next week, we're going to see how Moses responds to this and how God says, I'm going to go with you and I'm going to do this through you. But for now, we sit in the reality that God has revealed himself and he has a plan, and that this God is holy. He's a rescuer. He's faithful and he's good and he cares about us and he wants to partner with us to fulfill his purposes in the world. This is the God of Exodus. But he's not just the God of Exodus. He's the God who is here right now. He's there in the space that you're in. He's present among us. He was there before you sat down and you hit play on this video. God is holy and he is here. This whole time, we've been in the presence of a holy God, the same God that Moses encountered at the burning bush on that holy ground all those years ago is here and is among us, and he is inviting us to respond to him. How do we respond to this God? The God who is holy and the God who is here. Well, I think there's a lot of different ways, but I think two that jump out from this story that actually we see in Moses. The first is cultivate curiosity. See, it's no accident. Moses is hovering around the mountain of God. He's hovering around the place where God is known to be present and will reveal himself here in the burning bush, but also elsewhere in the story of Exodus. He's around the place where God is. His eyes are up. He's curious about what is going on around him. He sees it and he's willing to step into it. There's this curiosity that we see in Moses. And so the first thing I would say is, how do we respond to this God? Is we cultivate a curiosity. We want to put ourselves in a position to encounter this God. We want to be curious about him. We want to ask questions. We want to get our eyes up and look around and see what God is doing. We want to be curious like Moses. And secondly, we want to seek holy ground. You know, to know God, you got to start by being with God. And then as you go through your life to look for his presence and his activity around you, take the risk when God shows up to go into his presence. Take the risk to sit for 5 minutes a day and read the Bible and pray, or sit in silence. But maybe today the best thing that we can do to get started is to pray. And so I have 3 simple prayers to to help us cultivate curiosity and begin to seek the holy ground that is out there. And the 3 prayers are simple. God, show me your glory. Open my eyes to see you as you truly are. Reveal yourself to me, God. Show me your glory. Secondly, God, help me recognize the holy ground in my life. If you're active, if you're present, if you're doing stuff around me all the time, wherever you are, I want to be there because that's holy ground. God, help me recognize the holy ground in my life. And finally, God, cultivate a curiosity in me, a willingness to open myself up to you, and a willingness to take the risk to join you in what you're doing. That's how we cultivate curiosity. That's how we encounter God. That's how we find holy ground in his presence.